Hello, this is Joe Walensky, and I just wanted to talk about some of the things I've been working on lately and some of the sessions I'll be talking about at our Writers UA East event in Charleston. So for the last several months I've been cranking away trying to finish the second edition of my book about developing user assistance for mobile apps, and this last Labor Day weekend I was finally able to lock it down. So all the writing's all finished, and we're just over 400 pages, and let's see, the original, which came out in 2011, was about 120 pages. So there's a lot of new information, and I was kind of chasing after myself in terms of technology changing, and it seemed like every time I'd write something then there'd be something new. But anyway, finally got that all locked down, so that should be out in print form through lulu.com and Amazon and all those places in a little bit. But it's been interesting to work on it. It ties into project work that I do, and yeah, I've been able to kind of dig into a lot of things that I don't know, it seems like a lot of our peers, our colleagues in the technical communication space, user assistance professionals, they haven't necessarily had a chance to think through things. One of those is what I call the language of touch, the vocabulary of touch, which is just, first of all, recognizing that there's a whole different set of verbs involved in working with touch user interfaces, and at the surface it's like, well, you know, a tap is a tap, double tap, pinch, so on and all that. But actually when you get into it, there's a lot of variance. For example, a tap is a tap as long as it is iOS and Windows Phone. But technically, the Google term for tap is touch, and so if you look in any of their documentation, they use touch. But Samsung, which is the biggest maker of Android handsets, uses tap in all their documentation. And there's a lot of variants like that, different contextual cases for double tap, pinching and zooming, swipes versus flicks, and all that kind of thing. And you know, one level you might think, well, you know, does any of that really matter? I think it matters. I've seen a lot of documentation where the language just doesn't match at all with the touch language. Hasn't been set up properly based on what the particular apps are doing. I've seen mobile apps that have documentation that has clicks in the documentation, which is just, you know, totally crazy. I think the main thing is that it's important to have a conversation as to what your standards are, and you're going to make your own decisions about what vocabulary you're going to use, but hopefully it's one that's an informed decision based on all these possible variants that there are in the touch vocabulary. And so that's one of the things that I talk about in my session I'm going to do in Charleston. Another part to that is related to concise text, which is definitely something that you have to do with small screens. But in some of the classes that I teach for technical writers in various certificate programs, I've been taking this approach of doing exercises with what I call aggressive content editing, where your baseline is the typical procedure that you might normally write with title, conceptual, statement, steps, feedback, statements, related topic links, all that type of thing. But what you do is you look at your existing documentation and you put a hard cap of a very low percentage number on it, and attempt to get your word or even your character count down to 30%, maybe 25% of the way that you typically write things. And it's funny about that, like that percentage definitely takes you to a different level. You really, it's not about taking out a word here or taking out a word there. You have to really rethink just about everything about the way that you put topics together. And it's an interesting exercise, but I think it does deliver better information. Part of that is that you're also want to keep in mind that you want to still have an effective communication strategy. You just don't want to have words that are so minimal that they don't provide any helpful information. But there's some interesting strategies to do there that kind of go against maybe traditional ways of thinking about how we do technical writing. I think this idea of aggressive content editing, while it certainly makes sense for small screen devices, I think gives us a benefit in all kinds of documentation today. I think that just because storage space is cheap, that processors are fast, that the information that we put together just generally for websites and reference information, it has gotten really bloated. There's like no, we don't really care what the physical footprint of it is. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to dramatically reduce our word count, which is going to make that information faster and easier for people to consume. So anyway, I'm going to talk about lots of examples of that, and that's one of the things I'm excited about. Then another session I'm going to talk about is more generally trends in mobile user assistance, and that's just looking at things that I see happening as people develop their apps. In my book, I have hundreds of examples, lots of screenshots, and I've just looked everywhere I could for user assistance examples. And you can pick up a lot of trends, and I'm going to be pointing out some of those things. One of the really important areas of user assistance for smartphones and tablets is the first-time user experience. So the idea of tutorials, but in a way that's appropriate for an app ecosystem versus traditional desktop tutorials, using different technologies, using a different approach to be able to present that in a way that fits those types of devices. But that first-time user experience is still very important for many apps. The idea of answering some important questions up front while letting the user immediately be engaged with the app. And then there's also embedded help, and that's so critical to providing help information in the app ecosystem. Just the idea that going to a dedicated help system is or should always be considered a plan B. The idea is to get as much helpful information into the UI as possible. And there's strategies about that, getting involved in the right meetings at the right time, and understanding what's reasonable, practical in having negotiations with the developers about allocation of screen real estate and that type of thing. There's still a place for dedicated help systems, but you have to be very careful about how you put those together. The idea of using one of our traditional help authoring tools and just cranking out a smaller version of a help system that was originally designed for the desktop, well, you can do it. Technically it's possible, but do you end up with anything that's actually usable? I would challenge you to actually do use case testing, where if you were going to do that, and see if your mobile users, your users on the go, are actually able to consume that information in the way that you think they can. And in my experience, it doesn't work out too well. Yeah, there's also some differences between what we can do for tablet apps versus things that are set up for smartphones. If we're working with web apps that are displayed through an iPad or a Nexus 7 style device, an Amazon Fire, there's a pretty good amount of screen real estate there. And so it gives us more room to work with. But you always have to remember that that screen real estate is still within that app ecosystem as opposed to a traditional Windows system or even Mac OS X. And people have different ideas about how they want to get information in those environments. So I talk about that, and then about authoring strategies to work with, especially if you're working with apps that are what I call sidecars or children of larger enterprise applications where the different apps may be doing discrete parts that are part of this larger enterprise system. And there's a lot of strategies about how you can leverage your work in the desktop and still have good things on the small screen side. Anyway, those are some of the things that I've been working on. Stuff's really exciting to me. It's fun to work with it. Hopefully we'll see I'll see more and more of my colleagues getting involved in this area. And anyway, hopefully you found this information interesting. I'll keep people updated about when the book finally gets published, and hopefully you'll take a look at the offerings that we have for our Charleston event, and then we're also going to be doing one in Austin. So thanks a lot, and maybe I'll see you soon. Bye.